You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.
So, Masaki, how you doing early this Sunday morning over there in LA? And what's happening for 2021?
Yeah, doing good. Got my Brazilian coffee, my turbo boost, and ready to rock. So, yeah, I just posted a forecast for 2021. I had done my first official kind of forecast for 2020, and I posted it in the fall of 2019. So it was well before anybody heard about Outbreak, Dark Winter, Great Reset. But a lot of us knew 2020 was going to be big if you follow the astrological cycles. And, my primary reading method is numerology, but all these reading systems overlap. And 2020, intellectually, I think I was pretty spot on. In the mind, you can forecast this, but I was shocked like anybody else how massive and in your face the overturning, right? It's this Aquarian kind of like disruption, because a whole new system, a whole new world is forming now. So, I think the only thing that I really didn't put in the report was, obviously a virus outbreak to kick it off, but everything else pretty much fell into place. So I could go over some of the bullet points here. So
Yeah,
2020,
2021.
2020, so 2 and 2 is 4, right? The 2020, 2 and 2 is 4, which is 4 is Aquarian energy in numerology, which would include any of you people out there that are born on the 4th, say like the 13th, right? 1 and 3 is 4, or the 31st. Forecast for 2020, bullet points, I said global economic crisis, economic reset, political turmoil, especially in USA running up to presidential election. This was before anybody was talking about Antifa or Black Lives Matter, right? That went rioting for like 3 months straight in like Portland, open rebellion, riots in the streets. He was talking about riots in the streets in 2019, right? Unexpected earth changes, storms, earthquakes. We did have a lot of extreme weather. That's sort of like a trend that's been going on. And strange and unusual events, even paranormal or UFO sightings. So I think because everybody was so preoccupied with just trying to stay afloat and handle all the changes in 2020, they might have not paid attention to the paranormal events. But there was quite an uptick. You were seeing a lot of sightings of UFOs and unexplainable things, and even things that could be, maybe it's some kind of joke or it's a troll, but that monolith, right, that recently is popping up everywhere. It's probably humans doing it, but it's unusual, right? So 2020 was definitely, 2020 is sort of opening of a gate, in my opinion. And the real kind of like final bullet point for 2020 is this upcoming December 21st Saturn Jupiter conjunction, right? The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which in the astrological system, we move 51% Aquarius and 49% Pisces. So that means we're officially in the age of Aquarius, right? It's the dawning of the age of Aquarius, which is, it can be very enlightening. Aquarius rules the future sciences, frequency therapy, frequency healing, radionics, metaphysics, often connected to technology. But Aquarius is also, it's inherently destructive, because to bring the new, you have to destroy the old, right? What are we seeing now? I mean, even they're openly calling it Great Reset, right? So I think one thing to remember, though, is the powers that be, they are highly aware of the cycles. So it's no surprise that they pushed it on a year that would lock in to favor this kind of change. But it works both ways. It's open to anyone if you understand the trend. The trend is your friend, right? So if you're trying to go back, like a lot of people, they're just saying, I wear the mask, I'm a good boy, I let's follow the rules. They're actually not rules, they're mandates, right? They're just telling people to do this. If I do what I'm supposed to do, then we can go back to 2019. We're never going back to 2019. We can only move forward, especially we're in the transition of ages, right? So a lot of us, I think, that have been following us for years, again, I was saying, like, in our heads we know it, but then when you actually experience it real time, it's something else, Craig, right? You tell me what you think.
Oh yeah, well, I think we felt like we've known some of this stuff was happening for decades, and of course I have to define that a little better. But one of the things that we're seeing, like you're saying, there's no going back, right? So there's no going back to 2019. There's no going back to really, February of 2020. And when we look at ages shifting, so going from Pisces to Aquarius, in my opinion, Pisces and Aquarius are not the most getting along signs anyway. Aquarius is lightning bolts, nuclear explosions. Pisces is kind of like a cat lady, very, very emotional, very silly, definitely deeply spiritual, etc. But it's just that the two signs to me are not necessarily good neighbors. I mean, everyone has their own interpretations and such, but as you move between these ages, one astrologer I once knew, he said that like the first influence of truly moving into the age of Aquarius, of course, we weren't, at 51% yet, but was the first nuclear test, that huge release of energy. And so when you start looking at Pisces, somebody who likes to, meditate on Mount Shasta or over in Sedona or something like that, versus an atomic reaction, an explosion, those are two different worlds. And so as we shift into these ages and you see this turbulence that we're going through, I mean, it does give you a bit of sanity because you realize that, well, this is to be expected.
Yeah, and also, every age is not good or bad. It is what it is, but it has higher and lower aspects. And the age of Pisces was pretty rough because you're talking about, the fish man, Jesus on the cross. It's Pisces is connected to the martyr and victim, right? And Aquarius is about freedom, and it's about self-agency, and it's sort of like the sign of among many things, it's a sign of rebellion, like the rebellious teenager. So I would say it's time to grow up. And people never like change. So I think that's one of the reasons why, besides the obvious disruption, right, in people's like just their schedule, workflow, do they have a job, right? But besides that, I think there's a deep subconscious fear of what's coming and what's happening. So I think that's why also that at this point, I'm sure a lot of your viewers, a lot of people out there, they found that facts don't really matter. It's not about logic or facts anymore. It's all of people's history being up to this point. It's not the situation at hand. It's their whole family history, whatever traumas they've been through. Did they do any self-work? And I think a lot of us in this area, you don't start making pyramids and power devices if you didn't get your butt kicked. My personal opinion, right? A lot of people in the holistic sphere, they went through that archetypal, that hero's journey, the dark night of the soul. And then you're kind of forced out of the normal world, and you have to fix your health problems. Some people go through addiction, all kinds of that kind of stuff. But in that time, you're actually picking up information, knowledge, and tools that when you rejoin the tribe, when you rejoin society, you're healed, but you still retain those skills, right? So I think a lot of us has been through that, and it sure wasn't fun, but I'm sure as hell glad I went through that already, because things are moving so fast now, Craig.
Oh, they are.
Think about it. If you're trying to, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's going to be a lot more difficult. If you're trying to like do your self work and keep pace with all the changes that are happening, it's going to be pretty rough.
Oh
You know?
yeah. Yeah, this is a hard time to catch up. I think as we get between ages and you put it in that broader perspective, we are talking about ages. And like my chart is kind of a mix of Pisces and Aquarian, and so I kind of
Mhm.
have both those aspects. So I kind of know them. And I might give Pisces a hard time, but to me, it gets a little dreamy. It's a little ideal. I like Pisces, it's great. But to me, leaning on my Aquarian energy is much more powerful. And maybe that's because we're entering that age. So it's good to have a chart
Mhm.
that kind of is balanced between those two, because wow, I can live in both worlds. But the Aquarian world is much more interesting. It's much more relevant, and I think that this is a hard time to catch up, because many people might have people asking them about things. They're saying, hey, what's the reptilian, or what's the deep state, or uh, and that's just 3D. That's just kind of superficial, you might say. But you're right. People who've been doing this work, it's a different story, because people who've been working on their body, mind, and spirit, subtle abilities to perceive, their psychic ability, or we can call it intuitive ability, especially if they have a career, or a side job where they're using such talents. I mean, yeah, you've already gone through that. I could almost call it like a dark night of the soul. It doesn't have to be necessarily depression, but you've been through a journey and you
Oh
have a
yeah.
certain confidence. You go, I know this is real. You know, like we got a wand from Masaki the other day. And this
Yeah.
thing, you can feel the energy from this thing. We haven't even plugged it in yet, and now I know that's real. I can physically feel it, but that is a
Mhm.
huge quantum leap past where I would say most of society is. And right now, you need to be here and working on. It's almost like you need to be like a third-degree black belt right now. You know what I mean? You need to have achieved a lot, and now you're working on the higher levels. Because if you're like a white belt right now, you can catch up, but that's going to be really hard, because you're going to be catching up like while you're running across a battlefield. You know what I mean? Like running
Mhm.
across no man's land on a battlefield is the wrong time to learn how to shoot a rifle.
And basically, what we're talking about how people are having to juggle now, right? I mean, I switched up. I think everybody switched their routines this year, but I took on a lot more responsibilities. Helping out the family and those kinds of things, especially my parents. A lot of us, our parents are older, and whatever people think about what's happening. Older people in general, especially now, they want to be cautious, want to make sure they're safe. So, I took on a lot of responsibilities of like, doing grocery shopping for them and so forth. So juggled a little bit more this year. In addition to, I'm still working 24/7 on pyramid stuff, right? Well, guess what, Craig? You talk about juggling. From what I see, 2021 is going to be the year of the juggler. So I think that you can apply a lot of the trends that are happening now in 2020, and on top of that, it's going to be accelerated because Aquarian energy, it's an air sign. It starts zip, 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 right? You're no longer in this sort of like Piscean water energies, like as a metaphor, right? Like we're really tipping into, we're taking that first 1% into Aquarius. But guess what? That Uranian, uh, you know, Uranus is the planetary ruler of Aquarius. And Aquarius is, we've talked about it many times. The sign of Aquarius is three lines. They look like waves. It could even be like a Wi-Fi sign, right? So the transmission of ideas, the energy in general, is a lot of the so-called New Agers have said for a long time. There's this idea that the frequency is ramping up, therefore things happen more quickly. This is going to happen next year, so
Yeah, it's like the Piscean energy of being in uh, an inner tube floating down the river, a nice, soft, easy stream. You're just cruising along, It's fun, but you are going with the flow. You're not really decisive in your own life. You're just floating with your friends and you're cruising along. But then the difference between that and then riding the lightning, quite different. And so, yeah, I think with this changing of ages, we're seeing a crazy world. And that's one of the things definitely wanted to talk about was navigating that, because like you're saying, juggling. It seems that like Catherine Austin Fitz recently said that, she used to think it was about, you might say, being a prepper, having like your ranch, your location, and that's great. Good, have a home base, have your ranch and your goats and things like that. Wonderful. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. Good way to live. But she was saying an importance that she realized now is it's really the key is mobility. Because she's like,
Right.
you may be fleeing one state to another. You may have need to move around this country. And
Mhm.
that's one thing a person should look at when it comes to strengthening body, mind, and spirit, and also financially. Can you make money on the run? Or while you're, I shouldn't say on the run, but while you're moving, can you make money? Is your source of income totally centralized to a location? That may not work so well. So this is where it seems like we've known what we had to do. I think we definitely started figuring it out in 2020, but now 2021, now it's going to go into action, because you see how much happened in 2020. You're like, crap, now I may have to start moving around the country in 2021 to go
Mhm.
where I'm not forced to be vaccinated. It's free. The environment's livable. I mean, who knows? It only gets crazier. You look at how crashing economies can affect individual states. Maybe it's
Yep.
cool here in Arizona, but you don't want to be in California. You look at, depending on what happens with the election, either way, if we have rioting, maybe we'll see even more of an exodus from states. And I also see there being conflict, because I know, like here in Arizona, we're getting tired of the bullshit. Just keep going. Would you Californians just pass through and please go to
Right.
Austin? Would you stop? Don't stop here any longer.
Well, even county to county, it's different, right? So, uh, there are people, like say in LA County, that I don't know how it is now, but let's say summertime, a couple months ago, they would be going up to Ventura because it wasn't as locked down. Or, you go hours south to Orange County, and yeah, people are wearing masks, but it's mainly the people that are working at the restaurants and those kinds of things, where, it's a different culture. It's more, you could call it conservative, right? Traditionally Orange County has been like a red area, but it's a mentality difference. So, but state to state also, right? And going to the whole thing about the Californication going on. I was at Robert Phoenix, astrologer Robert Phoenix. He has a great show. Check him out on YouTube. He put together a conference in October. So, a lot of people, were there. Emily Moore, Off Planet Radio, the Crimmies, from Asheville. A lot of people, like-minded people. We went to the conference. And first time I've been to Texas, had a great time. Talked to my mom when I was there. She says, do you feel like you get some racism in Texas because you're Asian? And I said, I don't really feel, any of that, but I do get some weird looks when I tell people I'm from California. So,
Oh,
and for good reason, right?
How long
Because,
you staying?
well, I feel like it's a little disrespectful if you go to some place and then you try to impose your values on that place, right? And
Mhm.
obviously, if you go to Austin, it's already a very liberal blue city.
It's Portland.
But
Yeah.
but we are sort of in a time of polarity, which also goes back to my reading, right? Of it's the two brothers, the Gemini effect, right? Like the polarization. And so this polarization has been going on, but particularly 2021, there's many signs that show that just like last year, I was saying it's like that it's going to be very chaotic, right? Which is connected to number 4, 22 and 2 equals 4, Aquarian energy. 2021, 2 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5. 5. So the typical numbers in the Pythagorean numerology, which is the most popular numerology, goes 1 to 9, right? And then you have your master numbers, which are the more like psychic channeling, 11, 22, 33. But typically it's 1 to 9. 5 is right in the middle, right? So it does everything before and everything after. So what's that? That's the juggler. 5 is connected to Mercury energy. And Mercury energy is what? the two mercurial signs are Gemini and Virgo. But I would connect this more to Gemini this coming year in 2021. Why? Because we are in astrology in true node Gemini. The
Mm-hmm.
lunar nodes, right? If people know a natal chart, the moon nodes, sometimes they call the head and the tail of the dragon. That represents in the astrological thinking. North node or true node would be what you're supposed to do in this life. And the south node would be what you did, supposedly in the past life. But for the planet as a whole, there's a planetary trend. So we started true node Gemini in May of this year, and it runs all the way until January 2022. So what's the numerology telling us? It's Mercury energy. It's mercurial. It's that Gemini effect. Gemini, very short attention span, right? And it's just like doing 1,000 different things. Gemini rules the street. It's like the local circles. What's the opposite of local? It's international, right? How many people could travel internationally right now? There are flights, like I'm gonna go to Brazil soon, but in general, the traffic is like, what is it, 70% down, 90% down? You know why? There's always like kind of like two nodes. So like Gemini, what's the opposite sign? Sagittarius. What does Sagittarius rule? The foreigner and international, right? And even churches, Sagittarius rules the preacher and the church, which are all what? All the temples, all the churches, they're all closed. So, whether people, off the cuff, surface level, believe it or not, the value of these esoteric systems is their signs and symbols to, help explain the deeper level of the patterns in this 3D matrix, right? So if you understand the signs and the symbols, it's very informative on how to act, or what are the trends that you can ride on top of, because these trends, whether it's a global trend or it's your own personal chart, right? Each person has like a poker hand that they're born with. If you understand the cards that you have, the personality, or let's say like the global trend, it's like a flow, like a river, right? So if you understand the flow and you put yourself in that stream, you just start moving. The money for it starts coming in. Things are a lot easier. But most people, they're going on pure impulse, right? They're not that self-reflective. They're not aware of the environment that they're in. So they're either doing nothing, or sometimes they even try to go against the flow, right? A lot of people are like, let's go back to 2019. We're entering the age of Aquarius, people. We ain't going back. We're going, like, Aquarius is like future science.
Oh yeah.
That's like, it rules the aliens, the ETs, the interdimensionals. We're going to X-Files. So if you're trying to go back to 2019, you're missing the point, right?
Oh, absolutely. And so the esoteric sciences, like numerology and astrology, and really even being aware of larger cycles, like, let's say, like grand solar minimums and maximums, that could be said. It's not a esoteric science, but it is science that's a little bit off the grid, you might say. Most people don't know about that. It's like a waystone. It shows you. I mean, and when you are traveling across the countryside and you see those waystones, those landmarks, you go, oh, look, it tells you where you are, which way things are, and it shows you, I know where I want to go. And it goes, oh, it's that way. It's like this waystone. You're not just kind of lost. Because I think, especially 2020 was a hard year. And I think also 2021 will be even, more challenging in many ways for people who don't have those waystones, a way to understand what's going on around you. Because then when you understand it, you have that ability to also, well, understand yourself, because you're working on your own personal numerology, your own personal astrology. The great cycles might be happening, of course, ages, but also there's yours. There's your path. And that allows you, like you're saying, to get in the current. And that's that famous sign from, men who stare at goats. You get in the current, and then life supports you. You have a mission. And in a sense, like, there's really and that's what I think the crazy people, that's what I call them, the people who listen to this show, the crazy people. I would say, if you're listening to this, then you found your current to some extent.
Oh yeah.
Probably to a great extent. And if you got your current, then you're going to be fine. And that's the thing. You're good to go, and you have a certain power. Well, that's one of the things I wanted to mention was, it seems like, well, okay, one thing before that, Pisces. We're leaving Pisces, we're going into Aquarius,
Mhm.
and COVID being like a religion. Thomas Sheridan
Oh.
did a great video on it. I should have sent it to you
Uh-huh.
before this, but he did a great video on it. And he talks about, is this a virus, or is it you might say a demonic possession?
Mind virus.
It's a mind virus, so it is this
Yeah.
demonic possession. So, and wouldn't that be really a great way for the age of Pisces to go out, to have, you know, a bunch of zealots, a mind virus, it's kind of a religious virus. This whole, we have lots and lots of zealots, and you wonder, why are you praying to the great COVID? You know, if you had a cross with a crucified COVID virus on it, people would start wearing it. That's how it feels. It's pure zealotry.
Yeah. Well, this is not a judgment on anyone, but it's pretty obvious that even the polls, right? And I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Trumper, and I don't consider myself part of any party, but it's pretty obvious that they even have the phrase the lockdown left, right? And it's connected to I wish you guys could see Craig. He has his mic off. He's like laughing right now.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
there's some kind of triangle between this COVID. Or have you heard of the Branch Covidians? Like the
Oh gosh.
Branch Covidians, like
Yeah.
Waco, the Branch Covidians, the BLM Antifa movement, right? Which is very much victim consciousness. And that's not to say that America doesn't have racial problems and inequality. That's plainly, you got to be a dum-dum not to know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a connection between the whole COVID thing, the victim consciousness of BLM and Antifa, and then this transhuman movement. There's like some kind of triangle going on. And I see, it's just funny that nothing is constant. The Buddha, right, in Buddhism, he said, this too shall pass. The one thing that's constant is impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing stays the same. So it's interesting that what was fringe or bohemian, which would be more of the so-called left liberal, a lot of the arts and music community, is now actually mainstream, the ideology but it's been sort of taken over about diversity and intersectionality and all that kind of thing, which, nothing is 100% good or bad, but you have to know that they've weaponized this, right? They'll take the ethnics and then they'll weaponize it. They take the LGBT and then they weaponize it, right? But the real fringe now is what used to be, I guess, more mainline, where the conservatives and the traditionalists are now on the outs, right? So if you want to be real against the grain, well, try to, rock the American flag and talk about God and country and family, like, ew, who are these people, right? So it's interesting. But I would say the one thing that I could really identify is Aquarian in the positive sense is that sense for freedom. And if you're more so-called liberal minded or you consider yourself on the left, go seek out some of these like Trumpers, or you want to have some real fun, talk to some QAnon people, right? I met a lot of them in Texas, and they were very nice, good to talk to. And I would say a lot of the propaganda out there is like, these people are just racists. They're, totally judgmental. But what I see is they just want their space and they want freedom. They want to be independent. That sounds like the higher aspect of Aquarius to me.
Right? No, it is.
Yes. To be free, right? So, but, Aquarius does have, you could call Aquarius a sign of the rebel, the revolutionary, but also maybe the archetype of the rebellious teenager. Right? You're like, you don't tell me what to do, right? The other aspect, though, is Aquarius is about the group. It's an impersonal sign. So if you know Aquarian people, you often find them in a group because they kind of need to confirm their identity against the group identity, right? So I would say the higher aspect of Aquarius is an organic group consciousness, or say Robert Phoenix Conference. We all came together. We're from all different backgrounds. We may not completely have the exact same ideas, but we respect each other, and we all came together to hear some great talk about astrology. And I talked about pyramids,
Mm-hmm.
the esotericism, the metaphysics, right? That's, I would say, the higher aspect. But in the age of Aquarius, everybody wants to have a connected group mind, right? So if you're in a lower victim consciousness and you don't want to take self-agency, you don't want to take self-responsibility, and you just want to be safe, right? These people will go along with this kind of AI Borg hive mind. Because that's Aquarian also, but do you really want to do that? It seems a lot less interesting to me. But you're going to see these trends because I've talked to people that they think it's going to be one or the other, or who's going to quote unquote win, right? Are we going to win? Well, I think if you win, I think you carve out your own space where you can do what you want.
It
But
seems like,
don't think that we're all going to ascend. And I don't think so. I think you're seeing a hard split with, again, Gemini effect 2021, right? Gemini effect, the polarization. I think 2020 is a gateway, and we're like splitting. We're in the same physical 3D Earth, but we are definitely splitting. You can see the mentality. The country is split here in the U.S., right? If you go any region, any country in the world, it is very polarized, no matter what nationality. But I think we may even start seeing a physical split as far as like who takes these jabs and shots, what the hell is in them, and this whole AI trend.
yes.
Are you using the technology as a tool, or is the technology using you? So
Yeah, and that's the thing with Aquarian energy. Like I think the true Aquarian energy could, and when you think about that group, the Aquarian likes to do things with their friends. The Aquarian group. That's more like open source, you could say. That's like Linux. That's an open source project. Everybody is contributing, but nobody really owns it, and no one is taken from. And that's a huge difference.
Right.
I think we're redefining what is a community and what is a group, because right now you've got, this trend towards this strange neo-Bolshevism we're seeing, just this insane, like,
Right.
it's like, well, I don't want to be a lion walking through the Serengeti chasing a zebra. I want to be a lion in a cage at a zoo. And you say, that's not a lion. That is not a lion in the zoo. It isn't. But people, a surprising amount of the populace, they absolutely want that, and they'll fight for it.
Well, it's hilarious because these are people that never lived under real communism. Like, I lived in China for a year.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I speak to a lot of people from the old Soviet bloc, and the general sentiment is like, what the hell is going on in America? Like, it seems like you guys want to go back to the old Soviet days. And I think this is symptomatic of a decadent culture that has totally no idea what true totalitarianism is, right? And I can tell you, I mean, a lot of people have said this. We saw basically food lines, right? There are lines at the supermarket this year. Where do you see that? Los Angeles has one of the biggest Armenian populations in the world, and they have Soviet Armenia, which is now the country of Armenia, right? We have a lot of people here that lived in Soviet Armenia, and there's some guys like my age that they say, I remember this. I remember seeing food lines in the Soviet Union, right? But people here, they're not connecting it about you can only have 2 of each item. You have to wait in line, all that kind of stuff. I can tell you that although the mainstream narrative is the dangers coming from the right, Trump is a fascist and all this kind of stuff, if you look at the astrological trend, it would more come, I would say that socialism, communism, or techno-fascism is much more compatible with the age of Aquarius than the old school fascism that people think about, right? Because Aquarius is about the group, community, communism, right? So I think that, and you see all that, you see that connection too, right? With the tech companies
Oh yeah.
and the so-called propped up left, which I would say America doesn't really have a true left. There is no true left here. They're all neoliberal people that are totally demoralized.
It's difficult because I find that to be the over domesticated aspect of humanity, and it's difficult because how many of us have talked about, had someone extol the virtues of socialism to us and talk about how we should all just be quiet and get our shot and wear our mask, like while that individual telling you this owns their own home, drives a $50,000 or $100,000 car, you know what I mean? And like, and you, I always stop them and say, well, wait a second, you own your own home. Like, how can you be talking this bullshit? You don't get property in the world you want. You have a $50,000 car.
Well,
You don't own a car unless you might drive when the state gives you for, like, they have property. And yet it's so strange. The disconnect to me, it's just mind numbing. I don't even know how to deal with it.
If you dig deeper, there is no disconnect because guaranteed, Craig, if you come here to LA or you're in San Francisco or any, big metropolitan city, if the value of the house passes $1 million, there's going to be a BLM sign. It's an upper class, like white movement with a black face, right?
Yeah.
So that should tell you who it's benefiting. It's a class war. But even these people that are high income and their house is worth over $1 million, they're mistaken. Because if you have $100 million, you're actually poor. This is being pushed by the very elite. Mm-hmm. So, but if I think that this is all a lesson, because if the universe is like, okay, if you guys are so off base and misguided, you want real communism, we'll give you some techno communism. You'll see.
Oh, I absolutely will. Yeah. Well, so there's kind of a fight to be had. This is something, like I say, I've seen this coming for decades. This really interests me because I'm just kind of waiting. I'm just seeing how to approach it. Many people want to fight things. And I think, to me, it seems like right now we're in a time of a parallel society, like a parallel economy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things about Aquarius is that it's devilishly smart and fast. If you look at big corporations, they oftentimes, to get something done quickly, they will buy another company to do it, or they will spin off a separate company because they know their monolithic,
it's too slow.
Ice Age move and stuff will destroy any invention. So I think when you have the Aquarian energy and you have groups of individuals who are, rather than trying to enslave humanity, but trying to actually really empower something, like, so you can take Bitcoin, for example, open source, it's collaborated on, nobody particularly owns it, it's ubiquitous, but at the same time, you can be a part of it. It's one of these, it truly is a volunteer, parallel economy. You can be a part of it if you want. It will take nothing from you, and you have to give nothing up to be a part of it, unlike communism, where it's all or nothing and you lose everything. And so it seems like we are right now redefining what community is. And also, it seems to me there's nothing, I see a lot happening. I think most people who are intuitive just I feel dread quite a lot. I go, oh God. And it's not that negative, but I feel like, man, this is heavy energy in the world right now. I'm doing good, but man, do I ever feel that world pain. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, and I feel it and go, oh, there's a German word for it. I always call it Messerschmitt, but it's not. I can't pronounce it. I forget how it goes. German word for world pain. It's a great word. And so I'm feeling that. And you feel like there's a fight to be had. Like, you want to fight. Like, I don't want to have a vaccine. You can say, I don't want technocracy, blah, blah, blah. I don't like the idea of like Trump or not, we had a leader. There was a leader, you know. When we get Biden, if we do, that is, the leader is a technocracy. There is no leader. There is
Oh
nobody to
yeah.
protect us at
That's
all. You
that's
know?
just it's a program. It's business as usual, right?
Yeah, we go back to business as usual. So to me, like, how do you fight? Because I know a lot of people are asking that, you know, how do they fight? And I think to
Well,
myself, it's parallel society. You can't.
right. Well, you know, I won't name the name, but I was talking to this woman who's doing a lot around the 5G awareness, and with that, I mean, it's like every day, every week, there's all these super depressing articles. How do you fight it, right? And I had I don't get this often, but it was right before I was going to go to sleep, and I had a split second kind of like waking vision where I saw her in two instances. The first one is kind of like how she's operating now, where it's very tiring if you're fighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're going like this, you're trying to wake the people up, but you're fighting against multi-billion-dollar corporations, right? And then I saw her as Kuan Yin, you know, the god of mercy, the
Oh yeah.
Chinese mythology, and just emanating this high energy, pure light that just pushes away all the darkness, right? Which is it's like ease, right? So I told her this, and I said, you know, I think you have something in you where if you just and she's very intuitive, also, like almost like a psychic channel. So I said, instead of trying to like push back and fight, like you're saying, maybe we just, you know, there's this idea that's been flowing around for a long time. If you just start raising your vibration and just going to that higher aspect, you just lift up. You're like at a whole other bandwidth than these like lower energies. We can even be existing in the same space, but I think you and I, Craig, we're walking around and there's a lot of people out there. They're deathly afraid of even breathing the air. They're
Yes.
probably even wearing that mask at night. You know?
Oh yeah, they do. They do. Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's going to be allowed at some level, whether conscious or not. The universe will allow the robot society, but it's also going to allow space for the novelty and creative people. And if you think about it, if it was only that sort of like boot stamping on the human face forever, the total AI society, that's pretty boring.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's gonna, you know, and of course is the sign of the rebel. So already it's been happening for a while, but it's accelerated this year. The exodus from the big cities, and
Yes.
they're going towards the Sun Belt in the south, which I was talking about like 5 years ago. That Texas will the new stable zone going into the future.
Well, in that
Uh,
TV show Jericho, which is great. If anybody wants to see a real like prepper apocalypse TV show, you can find it on Netflix probably. Jericho, it's amazing, and it basically talks about how we were attacked. There was a war. It happened very quickly. No one even knew it was going to happen. We got EMP'd basically, and Jericho, I guess it's in Texas. No, it wasn't in Texas, but they go to Texas, and Texas becomes like is where America is reestablished from.
mm-hmm.
And when you watch the show, it makes that case. And so there oftentimes is, you know, pre-programming, precognition that we see come out of Hollywood like that. And I always thought it was really interesting, this show about, you know, America having that, you know, getting EMP'd like crazy. And then, it's a great show if one wants to watch it. It's just Hollywood, but it makes an amazing point. I always thought intuitively there was something to that. We rebuilt from Texas out, you know, very interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? This is we're just entering a new playing board, right? If you look at it as a game and you understand there's rules to the game, if you go in the Masonic Lodge, what do they have on the floor? The Masonic tile, right? There's this white and black squares. If you know where to step, you know what the moves are. You're way ahead of the average person, and that would be through the esoteric understanding, right? But
Absolutely.
I have some bullet points for 2021.
Yes. Let's hear
So
'em.
So I was saying that in numerology, last year was 4, 2021 is 5, right? 5 is Mercury energy, it's mercurial, and I would connect this to Gemini because in astrology, we're in true node Gemini, okay? So it's a Gemini trend. So bullet points for 2021, continuation of last year to the 2020 trend, the great reset, but it's going to be quicker, an acceleration of the trend, right? Because Gemini, air sign, but then also we're officially in Aquarius, which is the air sign. So acceleration, political friction, intense riots, and protests, right? Because Gemini is what? It's 2. If you look at the astrological sign, it's like 2 pillars, right? It's that the right and the left, the conservative and the liberal, the Trump and Biden. Actually, as of right now, we have 2 presidents, basically, right?
Yes.
Whatever people think, like technically, illegally, there are 2 presidents. We have like 2 parallel governments, and there's been a kind of a civil war going on for at least 4 years now. Now, economic crisis. So this is one thing that I thought was going to happen this and we're in the biggest economic collapse in modern history, but we haven't seen the banking runs, the banking crisis, and currency collapse. But that's in motion, and I know, Craig, that you follow the cryptocurrencies, and I just bought, Brazilian reais, so the Brazilian dollar, and the U.S. dollar is tanking pretty quick.
Oh yeah,
I noticed it was like 5.7 not too long ago, 5.7 Brazilian dollars to $1 American dollar, and I changed it. It was closer to like 5.1, but we're talking like a few months, which is a pretty dramatic drop, right? So what's that going to do? You're going to have a flood of liquidity into the safe havens, which would be gold, silver, cryptocurrency. Got to be a little careful with cryptocurrency, but I think you're much better off at least having a foot in the cryptocurrency than staying in cash dollars or, God forbid, in an IRA or 401k, which I don't know if you heard this, Craig, but there's some companies right now that they're not allowing cashing out, or they call distribution of your 401k. That's even with the tax penalty. So is it even your money, right?
No. Yeah.
Not financial advice, but if I were you, I would seriously think about taking that tax hit if you can and put it into something else, because I think all paper is going to burn. We're going to go digital. It was going to happen anyway. It's a cycle. The system is dead, but they're collapsing the system on purpose now to move us into the digital system and the digital cash flow. A national or global digital currency will be part of that.
Yeah. And that's where the Aquarian energy it's great to be moving into the age of Aquarius, because Aquarius is fast, and they're faster than the technocracy. They're faster than the globalists. They really are. So countries might be working towards a digital currency, but I don't think it will really amount to much, because there's already Bitcoin. And I look at it like Bitcoin is your Linux, is your open source. That is your Aquarian energy. And then a country crypto, who even cares? Nobody cares. I don't even see them really getting off the ground. And so as we talk, I get more confidence, because I look at the incredible quickness of the Aquarian energy. And I think like we're kind of dealing with this, it might be an old steam powered, like a steam powered tank, or a steam powered, some big, monstrous machine, but it's very slow and it's old. That's like your current financial system in the world. Where Aquarius, that's Bitcoin. That's so futuristic. So it seems like the DXY, the dollar strength index, it just dies. People get excited about these stimuluses, but they don't realize that you will, if you got money in the bank, you are going to lose more in dollar value than you ever get in stimulus. It may look like that moment, I've got some money, and you kind of do, but not exactly. Short term, good. Long term, devastation.
So Craig, you're telling me that I should take this shot for $1,500, right? Because they're proposing a stimulus check. It's free money. $1,500 for a human soul is it's pretty cheap.
That's a tough one. And see, that's where I do wonder about if, well, you know, with people leaving cities, I mean, it could go any way, but I do think with Aquarian energy coming in, people leaving cities, dispersing dispersing out into the countryside, you know, there's an argument to be made, especially with Aquarian energy, that could create state identity again. Because right now we've been losing state identity for quite a while. But now with this dispersion of people, could we find state identity, especially if you've moved where your values fit better? Because people have moved economically for the last decade. You know, people left California, or they went to California, they went to Seattle, they went to different areas for usually following the tech jobs and such. But what if you can just, well, I can live wherever I want, so I'll go live in like rural Tennessee because I like rednecks and guns, you know, I got my satellite dish and F society, you'll find me out there. I think we could see a reemergence of state identity, which I think that is a great way to beat the technocracy, is state sovereignty, state identity. You want your $1,500? Well, go live in California, you know, and you're free to do that, but you're also free to leave and go to a state where they say, no, we are sovereign and we will not allow that. And that creates a huge showdown between the federal government and states. But that showdown is late in coming.
Well, you know, Craig, both you and I were Americans, were, you know, from the U.S. So I think maybe in general, Americans view it's a little more grand, right? They call us they said this, we're the exceptional nation, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know, it's interesting. America is a Cancer country because it's born on July 4th, but it's a Cancer country with an Aquarian skill because it was born on the 4th, that number 4, right? But which I think it contributes to that, you know, Aquarius is connected to the archetype of Lucifer. It's like, I am the special one, right? But I just bring that up because I've been to smaller countries like Portugal, very small, but, you know, they did a lot in history. And Japan is actually a relatively small nation compared to U.S. Texas, they say, is about the same size as Germany.
Yeah.
Right? So I connect that to what you're saying is that, say, if you're in Texas, and Texas is the one state that has the legal right to revert to being its own country, basically. Yes. Right? So, you know, if it had to just be Texas as the heartland, they could do quite well because they have ports, they have gas, right? They have petroleum, they have farms and food, they have tech, and they got a lot of people with guns.
Oh, they do.
That's about it. That's all you need to be your own country, right?
Oh yeah.
So on more of my bullet points, these are a lot of these are economic because that's what I really see coming. It's like the whole. I don't think a lot is going to change around these lockdowns. I also think, being the Gemini trend, it's going to be open and closed and open and closed. Because Gemini is both, you know, the food inflation, shortages, and supply chain problems. I said this in this fall 2019 after I did my report. I was on a couple shows, and we did see a little bit of that, but trade with China is still open, and we didn't have the food supply, these supply chain problems. I think that's going to show up. So, word of advice, if you haven't done any food stocking, you may want to do it. And, you know, like you were saying, I think it's a little ridiculous if you're one of those people that has 20 years of dried food, right? But you may want to have like a month or a few months, because what if things get locked down? Like, say in New Mexico, those, I don't know, it wasn't a lot, but like those 12 supermarkets that were totally shut down. You know, New Mexico is kind of sparsely populated. It's very inconvenient if you can't buy food in your area, right? Yeah. So have a little food so you don't have to, you know, freak out. You know, you're like, okay. Or I think this could be the case, Craig. where there's going to be food, but the price is going to jump. And then just to cut down on future trips, having some extra food stock is good, right? And then
Yeah.
you don't have to wait on those lines too, right? Um, then related to Gemini, increase in, interstate relocation, and then also any kind of like travel, the things that would have been international, which has been happening, they go local or interstate. So instead of like, I was gonna go to Spain, but maybe I'll just spend a weekend in Santa Barbara, by the beach
Yeah.
or something like that, right? Because Gemini is local. The opposite sign, Sagittarius, is international. So the true node Gemini goes to January 2022. So I think basically the trend from last year is going to go all through next year. And then things will start to open up in 2022. But it may involve these COVID passes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Does that make sense? Right? And then
Oh, it does.
the concerts, the public spaces start opening up. But to go into those public spaces, they're going to want to have you kind of domesticated, right? So
Yes. Yeah, and that's a sad reality. And I think I've kind of looking at it like this somewhere in time idea. There's that movie Somewhere in Time. If you haven't seen it, the guy goes back in time.
mhm.
You have to make sure that you are dressed in like that era's clothing, and you take nothing
Uh-huh.
with you from the current time, because when you see it, it'll pull you back. And he ended up having a penny in his pocket, and that pulled him back into the current time. But he did
Uh-huh.
go back in time, and I kind of look at it like it's very hard to fight what's happening right now. And I know that's something that is bothering a lot of people because they can feel that world pain. They can feel this. We know there's, like, I would say, a lot of battle in the astral. Basically, you can feel this. The astral is rumbling. Much is going on, um, but we do need to become that parallel society, that parallel economy. And if you're working on that, I think the trick is, for me, something I found recently, is to kind of get somewhere in time about it. Even though I know it might be being naive, but I more and more am just living in that parallel society. I'm just going to the
Well,
other
I,
side, and that's to
I
the greatest extent I can.
I think a lot of us have already been there, because
Mm,
if you think about it, a lot of us were in some isolated on the fringe.
yes.
So we were already separated from the mainstream. Like I don't have much investment in, like, quote unquote mainstream. And Aquarius does rule oddballs, kind of
Yes.
quirky, strange people. Well, guess what? The quirky, strange people in the quirky, strange age, we
Mm,
become the mainstream, or we become the forefront. Those people that are trying to be normal, you're on the outs, especially going into next year. And let me bring this up about Trump. I think it's very interesting that Trump was the president presiding over this period. Whether he gets in again or not, we'll see what happens, because it's going to be resolved pretty soon. I kind of think there's still a chance he's going to get in, because that would be the ultimate chaos scenario. Like
oh
like
yeah.
the Archontic agenda, so called, is obviously, if Biden gets in, there's no argument. It is what it is. But Aquarius is all about chaos too, right?
Yeah.
Like Trump's Art of the Deal. His preferred method is to throw a bomb in the room, say something outrageous, get people all stirred up, and then he kind of like takes a step back and proposes a deal that people will agree to, right? He actually uses chaos, which you've seen again and again in every
Hmm.
controversy over the past 4 years, right? Like, I think anybody else would have been totally thrown off, but Trump, he loves conflict and chaos. So it's interesting he's the president, because Trump is a Gemini. We're in we're basically in 18 months of true node Gemini, which is extreme polarization. Okay. Uh, he also, though, is very Aquarian,
Hmm.
because he has Sun conjunct Uranus, right? It's Uranus is Aquarius, basically energy. So he thrives in chaos, right? Or
Mhm.
he is the disruptor. I would say this. So I think that the left in some ways are correct in that they have a great fear of Trump because he is a destroyer, but it's not in the way that they think. Because he came in, he was like God chosen to come in and stir the pot, right? I don't think anybody else could have done it, right?
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, the Trumpers and the MAGA people and the QAnon people, what's the phrase that Trump uses? It's "Make America Great Again," right? But there's a lot of sentiment in that we're going to go back to the roots. We're going to bring America back. I don't think so, because the exact same thing that the left sees, I
Oh
think
yeah.
the right is not understanding what Trump is. Trump is key in the implosion of America as we knew it. But he's also key in the rebirth of whatever comes next, right?
He's like that saying, truth destroys the world you used to live in. And that's
Oh yeah,
Trump.
right. Well, the foundations of the U.S. empire have been rotted for decades now. The only thing that was holding it together is the thought form, or the energy of the belief, the investment that people had in the system. But in this this era of Trump, and especially the Great Reset of this virus outbreak, whatever people think about it, that is now imploding. So there's nothing to hold this together, right? And I think a lot of us were looking at this before Trump got in, and according to the astrological cycles, in America's Pluto return, right? America is pretty much done in 2024. So I highly doubt that the United States of America will exist as 50 states. It may be fewer states. You may break into like federations or zones, or Texas goes on its own or something like that. But America as we knew it will not exist anymore. So people have to ask, what am I as an American if America no longer exists? Right? You're going to be like a state citizen, or as an individual, you better have some skills, or join the AI. That's the easy way out, join the hive mind. But I think it's a lot more interesting
Mm-hmm.
of people that I think we were just born to do what we do. If you're into like the metaphysics, the esoteric reading, herbalists, people that deal with energy tools, maybe blockchain, some of the interesting technologies, 3D printing, right? A lot of us, surprisingly, although I had said this and predicted this, 2020 was a true test. Can you stay afloat in this environment when, probably half the jobs are gone? I just closed shop, Craig. So in 11 months, I pulled in a little bit more than I did in 12 months last year. So I basically stayed even, which in this environment, that's like a gold
That's
record
good.
in the
Yeah.
music industry, right? So I'm like, wow, how I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm in the flow. Like I was saying, I'm doing all the esoteric stuff. And I probably know at least 24 people that are in the same area. So, the universe is favoring the trend. It's just that a lot of us were a little early, So if you had a hard time when you were younger, people saying like, why are you looking at those weird websites? That guy's kind of strange. You're probably one of the people that's doing okay now, So
Yeah, someone who's going to catch the current at this time, because especially with the if we're kind of
yep.
in some rapids right now, it doesn't matter. There might be rapids, but they can be kind of fun too. People hop in the river in the boat and they go down rapids for fun, you know. And so I think you can process it that way, because if you have your individual sovereignty, your spiritual sovereignty, your internal authority, if you're connected to source, your soul, then at this time, if you've already kind of been forged, you've already been beaten on like a sword stuck in the fire and then beaten on to make stronger and straight, then there is an aspect of just enjoying the rapids, just enjoy the chaos and go, regardless of those rapids, there's a current, and you're looking like down the stream and you're going, wow, it looks really cool, but I'm enjoying this part too. So yeah, I think that it reminds me that I've always thought that MMA, which has gotten more popular recently, it used to just be boxing, but now you've got MMA, quite the brutal sport. But I've always thought that was I've thought it was kind of Aquarian myself, actually, because sudden explosive energy, cunning, mental, it might be physical, but it's mostly, it's connected to one's will and one's skill and explosive energy. It's very, very Aquarian. And so, I don't know. I think that, when I focus on the Aquarian energy and I focus on that MMA type scrappiness that it has, and I look at how the Aquarian energy is way faster, while the current financial situation, I should say current financial structure, is wondering, how can we control people? How can we monitor everything? How can we do this great reset? The blockchainers, like the Bitcoin people, are like, see ya, we've already left. We moved our wealth out of your world. And even though there'll be a battle, and I think it will get nasty, I personally do think it will get nasty, because countries will want to control, they will want to take it, they will want to control it, they will want to make it illegal, but nobody owns it. It is nowhere. You can't nuke Bitcoin. America can dislike it, but it doesn't matter. And so it might be metaphorical. There's lots of ways this is happening, but it is happening. Aquarius is very, very badass.
Well, it contains both, because the ancient ruler of Aquarius before the outer planets were discovered was Saturn. So you see that represented in the restriction. It's sort of like a hidden kind of like whitewashed, very clean version of control, right? Where it's like inside your devices, but you're being tracked and traced, and that kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is, the ruler of Aquarius now is Uranus. The planet is literally like tipped on its side, right? It's about turning the world upside down and like breaking out and having your freedom, right? If you want to take the Saul Alinsky quote, that rules for radicals is that leftist, bullet point manual about how to lead a revolution. Well, he says in his foreword of his book, he says that, the first radical was God's chosen, that was so successful he even won his own kingdom, and that rebel is Lucifer, right? So, but the thing is, basically Lucifer is Enki, right? So there's a lot of these things. There's both. You could see it as went a little too over the line, but he's also the liberator, right? So be that. It's basically humanity. It's time to grow up, but not just that. The script was kind of getting old. If you look at the music, right? It's like we had like the last band music was maybe like in the 80s or something, 80s and 90s, and then everything. And then you had like the electronic music and the hip hop sample based. That was another way to kind of flip it, right, to something new. But then, are you gonna sample the sample?
Yeah.
I mean, the script was kind of running, like everything was kind of like, it was getting a little stale. So guess what? In comes the Aquarian Age and Trump, and like people are like, whoa, like, well, you guys wanted it, right? So now it's time. It's go time, right?
Yeah, and that's quite the feeling for those that are intuitive, that can feel it, that you feel this moment is here. And that's like, it reminds me of a weird analogy, but it reminds me of when I was in the military. I was in the military when I was a kid. I don't endorse such things now. Don't do that. Don't do that, kids. Don't. I
have to take some shots now too.
Don't join the military. Not life coach advice, but don't join the military. But the first time, with other people that I had had been with for a while, we were all, new in the military. The first time we ever really got in a fight, first time we ever really like, oh shit, and it overcame us and we had to, fight. We all looked at each other and all said the same thing. I'm not ready for this shit, because we're like ducking behind and rode this thing and we're like, oh my God, and it was chaotic, but then we were ready for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a feeling a lot of us are having. You may have trained for this moment, and you have. Your life has been that training, and here you are. But still, when you're about to be in that first firefight, when you're about to when you're pulling your bayonet out and it's going to get really bloody and dirty, you're never ready for that. And I think this fight is just as real.
Yeah, but
and
it's
there's no
mental.
way. Yeah, but it's mental, but still it's real.
Yeah.
The mental
Oh, yeah.
mental battle is real too. And I think everyone's looking, I'm not ready for this, but also we're like, well, when does it start? And it already has. But
It already has.
yeah, so do you have that feeling of unease sometimes, like you're getting
Just that, like I was saying, it's one thing to know it intellectually, but it's another thing when it's happening real time. So I might have mentioned this. I can't remember if I mentioned on your show, but I think it was maybe March 10th, somewhere around there, where it was announced that we were going to get locked down for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
It was only for 2 weeks, right? Supposedly. And I intentionally went to the Trader Joe's just to see what it looked like, because that was the great toilet paper run of 2020 for some. But you know why that is, right, Craig? Because we have the Saturn Pluto conjunction, and Pluto rules poop.
Oh.
So there's a poop. That's how archetypal things are. So for whatever reason, people didn't say like, I gotta stock food. They said I gotta buy toilet paper for some reason, right? But I went to the Trader Joe's just to see. It was like a movie. The checkers, they just like dazed because they checked out like basically the entire stock in the store. And it was empty. But I went just to say in my mind, like I saw it. So
Wow.
that's what I'm saying is like when you see it, real time, it's kind of shocking. But see, the difference is, and this is the value of being in the kind of area that we're in, or your viewers and people that we've been into this for years.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to have any practical application until now, because if you've been reading about these things, it's still shocking, but not as much as somebody that had people still have totally no, most people, they still have totally no concept of what's going on. They see all these events as unconnected when it's all connected.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
Huge.
And they have no sense of the timeline. They have no sense of these cycles. And so if you have an esoteric understanding, and I felt this, and Robert Phoenix said it more exactly in Texas. And maybe you could interview him and have him, because he did a talk on Freeman, but I don't think he fleshed it out as well as what his presentation in Texas. He laid out the timeline from 2020 to 2030, and he said basically, if you're expecting Trump to be the answer, we got a ways to go, because I think it's going to get a lot more. We haven't hit the hard part yet, which is probably the mid 2020s, and then around like the end of the decade, around 2030, that's when things are going to really open up, where there'll be a rejection of what's going on, and the alternative communities will be strong enough to break away. I also had a sense of this, but it was more based on the astrological transits, which they end in 2026. So like say the Uranus and Taurus, which is Uranus is Aquarian energy, the overturning, and Taurus can rule economy. So obviously that would tell you that the digital currency, the crypto, that's going to come in by 2026, right? And then the Neptune and Pisces, 2026. So based on that, I was already saying, you're not going to see stability return until the late 2020s. And then Robert Phoenix really fleshed it out a lot more exactly. And he has all the charts and comparing it to like the American Revolution and these kinds of
Mm.
things. So that's the benefit, is that, you know, a lot of us have been looking at this for a long time. It's sort of like you built a framework of understanding, like feeling out the boundaries of this existence, that's more relevant than the mainstream narrative. You're actually seeing what really exists, right?
Yes.
Where most people, they're, you know, it must be extremely frightening, Craig, if you have no, because they have, you know, the normal person, they have nothing to hold on to. Their corporate reality, their, you know, their simple pleasures, it's all been taken away. And they just want, you know, they're like that guy in the Matrix. He's like, just give me the Matrix steak. I know it's fake,
Yeah.
but just make sure it's juicy and it tastes good, and I'll do whatever you want, right? Because I don't think you could build this kind of understanding in a year or a few years. I think it takes many years to really, you know, really feel it deep in yourself that you're confident, especially as a reader, people that are readers or they're involved in these kind of metaphysical things. You just know, you have a deep internal compass of knowing which way to go, or what's true and what's BS, right?
You'll always be a step ahead, or a year ahead, or 6 months ahead, like you mentioned before. And that's one thing, as you did mention towards the end of your 2021, was people could expect greater downloads. And I think along with that, also accelerated intuition. Whatever you have had a bit of, you're going to have a lot more. And that to me rings very, very true, because it does seem that people are having, who are able, the most profound downloads, a much more clear channel to that information, and just intuition that is off the charts. And I think that is really a survival instinct that can click on. And maybe it's a natural evolution, but being able to read people, I mean, that to me has gotten much easier. And it shocks me. I guess it doesn't shock me, but it just realizes that the difference between this tribe and like maybe the general populace tribe is, to not be able to read a person on site must be difficult, because you just walk into one disaster after the next.
Craig, you mind if I pull up the symbol of Uranus? So
let's see it.
Let's see. You gotta enable my screen sharing there.
Let me enable. And give this to make host, forbid, rename. Let me actually say make you a host. I think that gives you like everything.
Okay, let me try here.
Yeah, I think that lets you do anything you want to do.
There we go. Okay. So you see that? This is the symbol of Uranus, the ruling planet of Aquarius. You see on top there, it literally looks like an antenna array.
Oh yeah.
Right? So and in my my 2021 reading, I said, or the forecast, I said I would, you know, this is sort of like an addendum or an extra, but I wouldn't be surprised if people start having spontaneous realizations and quote unquote downloads about all kinds of things, because, you know, Aquarian age is connected to Uranus, and it's all about these kind of like informational downloads. And you can, you know, this is all archetypal too, because being the air sign, it's like we're like downloading stuff off of Wi-Fi, right? And if I move here, so you see that blacked out corner, that is
Aquarius,
symbol of Aquarius. And if you look, it's the two lines here with the waves. I mean, that could have been some graphic designer said, okay, make a symbol for like Wi-Fi. It could have been this one, right? I got two bars. There's the two Aquarian bars there. And here's the water bearer, right, in the center. The symbol of Aquarius is the water bearer. And, you know, in ancient times, even today, if you go to like Africa or India, the women will often carry these huge water pots on their heads, you know, carrying it from the well to the village or whatever. So in ancient times, the you know, carrying water was actually women's work. No judgment. I'm just saying that's the way
it still is in some places. Yeah.
So this is obviously archetypal because it's a man with the water pitcher, the water bearer, right? And you see him pouring the water out. This is like the free flow of information, right? That's like internet, right? So I think that it's just interesting that in a lot of these artistic representations, there's a lot that can be gained about. And when I look at this guy, I don't see anything malicious. You know, this is the water coming out of the water pitcher, free flow. You know, let's get informational. Let's learn some things, and then getting in touch, getting these downloads. You know, that we can. Those of us that are tapped in and have the wisdom, because you know, with the Luciferian type archetype, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should do something. But you know, basically, with the kind of information and the energy that's coming through the planet now, we could do things that we never could have dreamed of just a few years ago. And you've probably, so I have a Patreon, the Pyramid Power Patreon, right? Actually, Craig, he got a free power device because I do some giveaways every month. On the Patreon, I've been relating some very powerful results I've had from the simplest radionics board. I have one on my site, right? And I don't know if you heard of that talk we did about the crypto. Did a live stream maybe.
Oh, I did. I listened to it.
And one of our patrons in Canada, he had a radionic working that blew my mind. And some of these things you could say, like, is it placebo? I don't know, because you know, I got out of jury duty, I didn't have to serve, and I got a bid on an eBay auction about 1 hour after I did a radionic working, right? That one is kind of like, that's kind of interesting, but the guy in Canada, he had some financial things happen that it's basically virtually impossible for him for that to happen. He had some money come in. It was basically a wiring error. Basically, he got some money that there's no way. How do you get money like that by mistake? It don't happen like that. So I think that's also related to the vibration of the so-called energy bumping up. Right?
Yes.
So any kind of your thought forms, your manifestations, they're going to happen quicker, right?
Yeah, reality is very pliable right now. And that's one thing is to people to keep in mind, is that yes, while there's this turbulence, while we're on the rapids heading into a greater age of Aquarius, also your ability to manifest is never been better. And so really, you know, that's my kind of somewhere in time analogy. I'm just going to my manifestation place. I'm focusing on what I want to create. I am honestly ignoring the world to the greatest extent that I can, because I know where I'm going, and I feel myself in that current, and that's where I'm happy, and that's where the magic happens. And so once in a while I get pulled out back into this world, because, you know, I got to go to Trader Joe's like anybody else and get my dried pineapple and avocados. I mean, of course, you know, there's nothing wrong with this world at all. It's just fine. But I do find that there's something which has changed in the energy, at least for me, of existence, where you can meditate deeper. You can connect to a source of meditation that will just keep you there. And if you put that effort forth with your radionics, like we did that talk on about the radionics board, if you have your little flashers going, your radionics, if you make your home quite literally a radionic device that radiates peace in your own home and strength and radiates that into your neighborhood. I mean, to me, I almost feel like a little kid, you know, playing make-believe again, but I am. Now I'm doing it as an adult. I'm living in the Aquarian age, you know, and I get pulled out as little as I possibly can.
Well, you know, my story, I think most people know me from the pyramids and energy tools. So I started 6 years ago, and I was doing it because I think pyramid power and orgonite or orgone pyramids is a great entryway into this whole field of energetics because it's fun. There's a lot that you get hands-on learn, you know. But I mainly started out from the EMF issues. You know, these tools, they don't block or shield out. That's what you hear, like, oh, it blocks the signals, right? They don't really block the signals. What they do is they harmonize them. It kind of smooths out that chaotic energy, so you're not hammered as much, and then you're able to sleep, get deeper sleep, and not get that kind of computer fatigue, right? And then obviously with this, 5G, that whole big issue, the frequencies have only been increasing, and they're going to increase into the future, right? But what I'm really realizing now, Craig, is that it's not only fun to use and get into these energy tools and the machine and the frequency therapy and those kinds of things, but it is becoming savior ass critical now, because I am so glad that I have pyramids and like the copper tensor rings, right? Because not I don't even really think about it anymore, even though a lot of people are like, oh, that's the pyramid, man. Like, they've just been around me for years now, 24/7, so I don't even notice. But besides all the above board effects, like better sleep, more energy, when I look back, I can see it was subtly shifting me where, I was just an average guy looking at 101 online to make orgonite pyramids, just like everybody else. But then now I'm making these pretty advanced powered pyramids. Like, how the hell did I go from here to there, right? I think it has to be connected to being around these energies every day.
Oh yeah.
And now, especially with whatever's in these shots, which, I'm into the far fringe, but I just don't believe anything, right? But people that have looked into this, there are some very eyebrow raising things that are in these shots. And why the hell does the mRNA shot need to be frozen
below zero?
70 below zero?
What? It's a superconductor, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you the other day that in my mind reminds me of like that black goo from the X-Files that was found in the Antarctic or wherever it was, It is some sci-fi stuff, and we are going to see some sci-fi things this decade. But my recommendation for people that ask, what should I get as far as energy tools? I would say this. Number one, get something on your bedstand, whether it's a properly made orgone pyramid, a fair-sized shungite pyramid, some kind of tool like that on your bedstand. If you can reach, if it's strong and you can like muscle test, or people that dowse, just make sure that the energy's strong. If you can reach over and touch it and it's on your bedstand, that's going to be within range. And then also have some kind of strong pendant, energy pendant that you can wear, because it's just extra protection inside the house. But then when you go outside the house, you're not, typically it's very difficult to walk on the street and then walking around with a pyramid, right? You could do it, but it's a lot more, just lightweight to have a pendant. And I think the copper tensor pendants are great. So those would be my two recommendations. And beyond that, if you get more pieces, then you just sort of extend your, I would say your safe zone, your energy. You just start, because what they're doing is they're encroaching on our space, right? With these frequencies, with all these mandates and things, they're trying to crunch us down. And what we can do is, by raising our energy, our frequency, our vibration, is we start to push our space out. And they have that saying, the home is your castle, right? So in that whole idea of the sovereign citizen, the state citizen movement, you can apply that to energetics. So it's like, within my space, I am sovereign.
Yes.
And beyond that, you can do whatever the hell you want. But in my space, this is my house. This is my space, and you just keep that very balanced and coherent.
Oh yeah,
And,
and I can tell definitely we've had some amazing experiences just with the Tower Buster
all
pucks,
right,
and like this one here, it's amazing. It came with a little, you can see
a clear section.
a clear section, and you realize how much Masaki packs these things with goodies. These are very powerful. In previous interviews, we've talked about some of the astounding things these things that has happened around these things. Well, I don't want to keep you forever, but we did talk about the shots, and I just wanted to mention something
Sure.
before we, because this is, I think, is interesting. There was, I won't mention the company, but they were doing vaccine trials, and one person, after they had done the trial, he said, they've killed God. I can't feel God anymore. My soul is dead. And I checked it up. I did follow it up some. I think the person might have been in a moment of hysterics. So I don't know. I think he came to his senses later, but he may have been having a true experience, something happening. And of course, that's gotten a lot of retweets, reposts in social media. That has been around. A person can decide if that was valid on their own. But what is definitely valid, I think, is I've been studying Rudolf Steiner for decades, and he's really a challenging person to read and to follow. I love his work. It's one of those things that sinks in over time. And this quote has gotten some, you'll see it out there in social media probably, but I did check up on it, and it really is him. It's during one of his lectures. I think it was around 1914 or something like that, latest 1917. I actually have the lecture where he said this, so I validated it. He did say this. And when it comes to getting the shot, check this out. And this man has proven over the decades to be powerful. He did see the future and many things that are happening right now. He said, I have told you that the spirits of darkness are going to inspire their human hosts in whom they will be dwelling to find a vaccine that will drive all inclination towards spirituality out of people's souls when they are still very young. And this will happen in a roundabout way through the living body. And that was, the man said it, so beware, do what you must, but just be aware that, I'm going to avoid it.
Well, it's funny, right? These people that deny the existence of God are obsessed with finding the God gene so they can turn it off. And the thing is, although it can be a little scary, it's inconvenient, that's for sure. With these, they're going to roll out the COVID pass and whatever. It's still based on your free will. So I don't care how dictatorial these powers that be are. If you took the shot, that was on you. I think, Craig, that it is always going to be, it's never going to be totally mandatory. It's going to be a lot. They're going to make it hard as hell to operate without taking the shot, but it's going to be based on employment. That's for sure. If you're a medical, if you're a civil servant, if you work in schools or university, then they say, well, it's not mandatory, but it's a company policy, right? Or, well, if you want to travel, you got to take the shot. Well, I guess I'm not traveling for 5 or 10 years. F you, right? I think that if we go along with kind of like what I was saying before this whole COVID thing happened, and then what Robert was talking about, I think the outcome is already determined at some level, because it is baked in the cake, people's worldview right now, and it's going to take about 10 years to play out. But what is fringe now will be mainstream in 10 years. So if you have any inclination towards these topics, if you have been a part-time or hobbyist doing tarot cards and those kind of things, you don't have anything to lose by really starting to bone up, and that could be your next career, or it could lead you on a path towards something very fruitful, right? Because if you start out waiting for things to settle down, you already kind of missed the boat. Now's the time to plant the seeds, and time is going to pass by so quick, people. You're going to wake up in 2030 and you could be very successful. You know, there's the line from here to there kind of like might go in waves, you know, kind of back and forth, but I'm a realist. I'm not going to say something just to please people. And I feel that there is definitely a space for us to move in. It may not be for everybody, because some people, they're going to naturally gravitate towards that archontic AI space, but that ain't for us. That ain't for me. And I really feel very confident, even though the world's going crazy. So maybe that's Aquarian, right?
That's Aquarian, yes. Globalists are slow and dumb. Aquarians are quick and nimble. Yes.
So that's my message. And you know, I did add a little addendum, or I stuck an extra paragraph in at the end of my report for 2021, which is up on patreon.com/pyramid power. And I just reemphasized that a lot of us in our area, even though the world was going crazy in 2020, we actually did very well.
Yes,
you know?
surprisingly.
So,
yes.
Yeah, so that's you know, you always got to give the people some kind of highlight, and that is, in this chaos, we can already see a lot of positive trends emerging, you know.
Yeah, we can. And that's the trick. That's why I keep trying to do my somewhere in time life right now, where I'm just focusing on the current, just focusing on the parallel reality, which is much better. And definitely being a realist. I'm not living, you know, in some strange delusion. It's nothing like that. But you definitely can discipline your focus to what's next. I mean, who cares about what's already done and is dying? I just be what's next, you know. Definitely. Well, Masaki, it's been amazing having you on the show. I'm glad we got to catch up. Everybody, go to Patreon, pyramidpower.com, join the Patreon. It's a lot of fun. It's a great community. The chats that we have, the Zoom chats once in a while are really great. Masaki's got amazing giveaways. I can attest to that myself. And all of his products are spiritually badass. So,
all right.
you know, definitely join the tribe. I want to see everybody there. You know, any last words?
Yeah. Well, you know, I have patreon.com, pyramid power, and then website akaida.com. If you're seeing this in December, I'm taking a break. I'll be back after New Year's for the shop, akaida.com. I have a lot of stuff on YouTube, Akaida TV, so people could catch me there also.
Yes. All right. Well, take care. I think I better get us tensor rings before you head out of town, because, you know.
I could have it wrapped and shipped out for Monday. After that, I'm gone. So.
Okay. It's your last chance, people. Better hook it up, you know, or you're screwed for a couple of weeks. All right. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.